what would happen if you fell asleep on top of a 4.5 mil Knit Pro Cubics DPN.
And when we come back in part 2, we'll be to discover...
Did you do that?
I did, and I can show you. This is what happened.
How did you do that?
I fell asleep on.
I didn't like netball either. Loathed it at school, netball.
Netball's just silly. You can't move with the ball.
You can't. You can't.
What's that about?
You know, you get...
Colourful, they were now very austere. Useless.
You know, you get the ball, you can't move. You just got to, like, move one foot, move around. I can't... Oh, what is that all about? I just want to run with the ball.
By May, Mary...
Everybody has loads going on.
Of their gorgeous little church. I don't believe it.
And I just lost it then. I'm old.
No, she had a little cough. You didn't hear it. Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show featuring a rather sparkling new episode of England, a Castle Nation.
Yes, indeed.
Oh yes, I'm very excited because it's time to return to Midland, and I've got to say, I love that place.
We've been lots over the years, haven't we?
Absolutely, and I think what makes it so special is, and you take it for granted, and I mentioned it 2 episodes ago when we put out the first episode about Midland, I'd never fully appreciated how big it is.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is a big castle.
It is the biggest castle, other than the Tower of London, which I've got to say was a bit rubbish, that we've ever been to.
We went to the Tower of London years ago, and we weren't that impressed.
Do you know what? I'd be interested to know if it's a similar size in height, or if it's the same. Because that's the thing about Midland is, when you're on ground level, you don't tend to look up. As soon as you put a drone up, that's the difference.
Yeah, which of course we'd never done before.
No.
So, yeah.
Suddenly you can see, actually, my goodness, I am dwarfed by this absolutely huge place. But yes, we're back, and it's time to get into the story of the first Tudor queen.
Yes.
So that's very exciting. And she was a real trailblazer too, because up until this first Tudor queen, no one had ever been a reigning queen before. Right. A ruling queen.
Ah, right, okay.
There'd always been the
like
wife.
Like a queen consort, or if they called it that.
Yeah,
yeah.
The wife of a king.
Yes.
And she blazed a trail which then enabled everyone who has been a queen since to come after her, because up until that point it was all solely sort of male based, which is totally wrong, of course, because, you know, at the end of the day, monarchy...
Some of our best rulers have been queens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into some of those over the course of the next few episodes. But huge thanks to everyone for their wonderful comments after your last absolutely triumph. I loved it. It's my favourite one of the series. Yarny Book Club.
Yes, the Clan of the Cave Bear, my beloved Clan of the Cave
You
Bear.
nailed it.
Did I?
It's so
I don't
nice.
know. I don't know.
Stop
I
it.
don't feel like I could ever have nailed it, because I just don't feel I could have ever done justice to the book, because
I think this is the problem.
It's a work of art, isn't it? That book, I think.
But more than that, it's what it means to you.
That is true. It's a very personal thing, and not everybody feels like this, do they? So, yeah.
But I suspect, and I hope, that everyone feels this way about something.
Yes.
You have to imagine the thing which you feel the strongest about.
Yeah, a book or a film or a place or whatever.
Yeah. Who knows what it might be, but then you have to create a colourway that best represents that.
It's nerve-wracking.
It's nerve-wracking. It's never going to live up to your expectations, probably.
No, probably
especially
not.
when it's you and you think everything that you do is rubbish.
Yeah.
Now, we've just published a radio show last week.
Yes.
And it was all about... Well, the radio show was actually called Parenting is Hard. And it's because... It's a big, momentous sort of week, really. It is, it's huge.
It's a huge week.
Our daughter, Bryony, is about to finish school.
Yes.
So she's about to finish her A-levels. That's the final exams they do in sort of official, proper school in the UK. And she does a final one on Friday.
She's doing an A-level right now.
She is.
As we speak. Fingers crossed for her, everyone. Yeah.
And she's got a final one on Friday. And while she is going to go in for a few days next week, officially this is her final week of school. And it's just bonkers, really.
It's a very odd feeling. She keeps being very teenagery, dramatic about it, you know, which is funny. But it is a momentous thing, isn't it?
It's obviously for her, but it feels like a huge moment for us.
It does.
She's always been at school.
Yeah, there's lots of sort of final doings of...
End of an era.
Final going to get her from school, final taking her to school, final making her lunch, because I still make her packed lunches.
Well, you would. There'll be plenty of people who do.
Maybe there are.
Well, there are at school. That's the thing. No.
I don't think many there are in her year. I think most of them just go to like the cafe, canteen.
They might do, but it's pretty normal.
But she didn't like the food there.
It's fairly normal.
Well, I think it's normal.
Well, it is. This is the point when things like that normally stop.
Yeah, but a lot of kids also walk into town and get lunch, don't they? Because it is walkable into town. It's a bit of a walk.
Well, it is.
Or some of them have cars and they're driving. Whatever, you don't need to know any
Not
of
really,
this.
it's...
But there's a lot of like last things, you know, never going to do that again, never going to do that again.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling having done it from her being 4 or 5 years old.
It is, and we covered very much the sort of things that we're finding hard.
Yeah.
So do go and listen to our radio show if you want to get the full sort of lowdown. But I think
we spoke about the whole university thing, and we told everyone a bit about how universities work in this country and the cost and everything. It might be interesting to someone if you want to go and listen. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. If you want really detailed information on how universities
work. It wasn't that
work,
detailed because I don't really know that much because I didn't go to university.
You shared everything. It was extremely brilliant.
Okay.
It was brilliant. You know, let's cover all the bases. And we did.
It's different to America though, isn't it? It's quite a lot different.
Oh, it is. Yeah. But not only was Bryony finishing her schooling over these last 2 weeks, well, it's right now, but also as well, Kay's only gone and launched the 3rd platinum pattern of this year's platinum collection.
Yep.
So exciting because it's a special collection within a collection, celebrating all the sort of key fun things about the Bakery Bears.
Yeah.
So we've had the
Pop socks.
We've had now the Endy Bits Scarflette.
Endy Bits Scarflette, and I showed it last time, didn't I?
And you finished it now.
Finished it, pattern done, everybody's got the pattern.
And you'll be showing the finished object later on?
I shall model it.
Yes.
In what's off my needles. Yeah.
And just interesting point to note, because I've heard a few people say, oh, you know, I wish those patterns were available to buy because, you know, I can't afford to be a patron. I mean, I certainly wouldn't ever advertise this too readily, but were you to sign up as a gold patron right now, you'll get access to 4 patterns, which if you were to purchase them, would cost you $20?
No, almost getting on for £20. So that's more in dollars.
So maybe $25.
6, 12, 18. Yeah, maybe $24, $25. Yeah.
So there would be nothing to stop you signing up as a gold patron,
which is $10 a month.
Downloading the 4 patterns. And then you'd be perfectly within your rights to stop being a patron at the end of the month if you weren't enjoying being a patron.
So just, you know, sign up for a month, have a look around, get the patterns.
4 patterns.
Watch some videos. You know, there's so much. There's honestly so much.
What you see here on YouTube...
If it wasn't for you, you don't have to carry on.
No.
Yeah.
What you see on YouTube is a fraction.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally is a fraction of what we do. So, like Kay says, get the 4 patterns... Have a look at the other stuff.
Yeah.
And it could well be that you, after you've got those patterns, you downgrade to one of the lower subscriptions. Or, like I said, if it's not for you, you don't have to stay on.
You might love it and you want to stick around with us.
Just get the patterns and run. Look, that's enough of our waffle. So, yes, it's time for me to say, Kay Jones, what's on your needles?
Okay, so I've got 2 new cast-ons to show you this time. And the first one is a new cast-on.
Thank you very much.
And I'm having a bit of an Advent knit. I'm doing a bit of Christmas in June. There isn't a thing for that, but that's what I'm doing. I am knitting an Advent project. Let me show you the bag I've put it in. Do you remember this bag? I made this bag last year. Our theme for Advent, our Advent calendar last year was the Nutcracker. And I cross-stitched this fantastic Nutcracker, and this is from Caterpillar Cross Stitch. It's actually part of a bigger Nutcracker piece, like a sort of sampler piece, but I just took out the nutcracker and a few of the little sweets and things and dotted those around. And then I patchworked it together with all of these lovely festive fabrics. These are all from Liberty. It's Liberty, but it's quilting cotton. I made myself this lovely big bag. So it seemed highly appropriate to put this Advent project in the bag. And what I'm knitting is another one of my scarves that I like to make. I made loads of these last year in various different guises, let's say. There was a version that went out with Val and Vent. I did one for Bryony during Halloween because I got a Halloween Advent, no, wouldn't be called that, a Halloween Advent in inverted commas countdown-y yarn thing. I made one there. I showed all of these on the show last year. But then at Christmas through December, I knit one of these using an advent calendar from Beaches and Birdsong. You might remember that. And it was The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe themed. And I absolutely loved that advent calendar. And in fact, I've just bought her one for this year. She put it in her shop on the 1st of June. I don't know if it's still there, if there's any left. But this year it's Peter Pan. And although I'm not a massive fan of Peter Pan, I think it's quite nice. You know, it's a lovely story, lovely. I've watched various adaptations of it on the TV. I more wanted to get it because I enjoyed it so much last year. And it's really economical. It is very inexpensive for an advent calendar. I don't really know how she does it, to be honest. She should be charging more, but, you know, I've paid what she was charging. So I'm very excited about that. That's the only advent calendar that I've purchased this year. I haven't bought any more. So yeah, I'm making another one of these scarves. So I'll stop talking and show you where I'm up to. I'm on day 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm on day 5. So this is where I'm up to so far. So I've got sort of creams and peaches running through this first section. When I knitted this originally in December, I said at the time I was thinking of writing the pattern up. Well, I did. I wrote it up immediately. We went out into the woods. I wanted to take photos when it was winter. So we went out into the woods, took some lovely photos of it, and I wrote the pattern up. And then I just had a bit of a wobble over it and thought, oh, is it too simple? Blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, does this justify being a paid-for pattern? And went through all of that saga for a few months. But I've come back round to thinking that I am going to release this it will be probably around the beginning of November. There's a few reasons why I'm going to release it. One, the main reason, I'll be honest, the main reason is because I really loved knitting this in December. I knit it like a full advent calendar. I knit it every single day and I kept up every single day and I had a completed scarf by Christmas Day. And I absolutely loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I could easily keep up with a section a day. And it was just really pleasant knitting, for particularly for December when it's really busy, isn't it? Everybody has loads going on, and it was just the perfect thing. So yeah, I lost my train of thought there, but yeah, I that's the main reason. Yes, that's the main reason why, and I just lost it then. I'm old.
No, she had a little cough. You didn't hear it. Because I edited it out.
Hay fevery cough thing.
Yeah. Weird weather.
It's like, really weird weather at the minute.
It's suddenly like 8 degrees outside.
It's not very warm at the moment. We're not complaining at all. It's just very strange.
But then...
My roses don't know what's going on. They've not quite bloomed yet.
See a report in the paper. Oh, warmest May in history. What?
Not here, it's not. I think it's a maximum of like 14 degrees C today.
I don't recall a May as cold as this in a long time.
It's not May, it's June.
June. Oh,
it's June.
That's even more shocking, Kate.
Yeah. Well, you see now, in a couple of weeks, it'll be boiling and then we'll be...
No, we won't mind. We want it for the garden.
I know. Anyway, yeah, so that's the main reason I've decided that I'm going to release this, because I really enjoyed knitting it. And I used that as my... judge. I judge things a lot by whether I've enjoyed it, and that's always held me in good stead with regards to my designs, because I do always knit through my designs, apart from the ones I designed for Dan specifically. he knits those. There's not many of those. But I always knit my own designs because I just think it's so important to experience what it's like to knit it as a knitter. It's so important because I could write a pattern and just give it to someone and say, would you test that for me? But their experience of knitting it is entirely different because everybody's experience of knitting something is different, isn't it? And, they might report back to me, oh, it was it was great, it was fine, I really enjoyed it. But then, conversely, it might be that, not that they're not being honest, that's the wrong way of saying it, but I don't know, I don't quite know how to say it.
I'll say it for you. Kay likes to produce patterns which give you a particular feeling. The only way that she knows that they give you that particular feeling is if she experiences it herself.
Thank you.
Because the problem is when people do things for you, human beings tend to want to make the other person happy.
Yeah.
So they will, whilst they might point out errors that are in your pattern, they might not be completely honest if they thought that was the most tedious knit I've ever had in my life.
Yeah. So that, that is why it's so important to me to knit through. Dan said it much better than me. Yeah, so I really loved this. And then the other thing that I'm going to do is add in some tutorials as well. I'm going to put in some tutorials for like the finishing and also how I actually knit things like this, where you end up with a big long tube and you've got a lot of fabric under your needles and it can become a bit cumbersome. And I've got a technique of knitting these which just makes it like a breeze. So I'm going to include a video in that as well. So yeah, all that to say, I'm knitting another one and I'm really enjoying it. So the yarn that I'm using is actually an advent calendar that I bought last year. It's from Beehive Yarns. I probably spoke about this maybe at the time when I was opening it. I can't even remember. But yeah, it's from Beehive Yarns and it was patisserie themed. And I can show you this now, obviously, because it's from last year. But the colours ran from... I'm not using them in the order that they were given to me. So I'm not using these in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've rearranged them to make it pleasing to me, which I don't think is a problem. So I've started with all these peaches and then it runs into... I'll show you a few more of the colours. I've got them all labelled up with the numbers. But there was like a lot of pinks, peaches, blues and a bit of green, purples. I'll just pull out a few just to give you an idea. So look, these are the sort of colours. Very, very pretty. It was patisserie themed. Now, the colourways are all really pretty. Personally, I wouldn't buy another advent calendar from this dyer only because, and this might be something she changes in the future, I don't know, but I know that other dyers do this and I just don't, it's not something I enjoy. But when you have an advent calendar, what happens quite often is you'll just get a card like this with all of the colourways on, and then each of the minis is obviously wrapped up separately and you open them separately, but then you have to look at the card to find out what that colour is called. Now, I just I really don't like this, and I understand why it's done. I absolutely understand, because it's much quicker, isn't it, to do this. Making advent calendars is so time intensive anyway, so I absolutely understand why this is done. But it's not something I enjoy, because I ended up giving this to Bryony, and I just got her to tell me what each of the colours were every day, so that I wasn't seeing what the next ones were. Because to me, that's the whole point, isn't it? That you open one a day and you find out on that day what it is. And if you've got this, and as much as you possibly try just to glance at that days, it's impossible, isn't it? You catch a look and naturally I'm like, oh yeah, I'm scanning all of the other ones. And it then loses the purpose, because I don't want to know what all of the upcoming names are. Because when you know what the names are, you can kind of guess what the colours are going to be. For example, tart citron, peach melba, violet meringue. You can guess what the colours are going to be, and that's not something that I want. So this was patisserie themed, but there was an awful lot of macarons in it.
Yeah, I remember.
I think there was like 9.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I've always found one macaron is enough.
I don't even like them.
I don't like
That's nothing to do with the yarn, you know. I don't like all of these puddings
do you know
on the
what?
list.
I think it is a little bit.
Maybe.
Because if you don't like to eat macarons, that's immediately going to make you not engage with what you're seeing.
Maybe so.
Would do me.
Maybe so. And quite a lot of the things that I listed, I'd never heard of, which again is not so much of a problem. But
you don't really want to be educated when you're opening an advent calendar, do you?
No, like
it's supposed to be fun.
Number 13 was Ispahan. You know, and there's a few others as well, and I didn't know what they were. But I'm not a patisserie expert, so that's not surprising. I'm sure that there are lots of people out there as well that didn't know what they were. But inevitably, then what I did was I went and I Googled it, and I just thought to myself, you know, what if you're someone? I know that most people have technology, but what if you don't? And you open that up and you don't know. It doesn't mean anything, does it? If you don't know what that means, so. Maybe if I was going to do that, and if I was going to do it, and I was choosing things that maybe people didn't know what it might be, I think I might have just put a bit of an explanation after it and said what type of a dessert it was. Yeah, look, I'm not going to go on and on about that because at the end of the day, the yarn is lovely and I'm using the yarn. So for the stripes, I'm using this gorgeous purple. Look at that. It's like a proper sort of royal purple, isn't it? It's so lovely. And this is Malabrigo sock, just straightforward sock. So it's 100% superwash merino. And it's the African violet. Yes, Violetta Africana. And I just thought this colour went so well with all of the shades. And at the moment it's a really strong contrast and looks great. But when I get more into these purples, it's going to be a bit less of a contrast. And then I've also got a couple of browns where it'll be a bit of a less, lesser contrast. But it contrasts well with all of them. There's some lovely pinks, I've got to say. Some really pretty pinks, which you know that I vastly approve of. So yeah, I mean the yarns are all lovely, and I'm really enjoying it. So this is yarn held double. So each of my minis I'm splitting into 2 10 grams, and then I'm holding those double. So each of these sections you're just knitting through 10 grams of yarn, which is perfectly doable in a day. You know, like I say, I did it last December. I'm not sticking to the 1 stripe a day this time because there's no great rush for this. I'm just doing it, as and when I fancy it. And it's growing really quickly. So I'm really enjoying it. So that design will be coming out. I'll show you that another time a bit further on. And it will be coming out probably beginning of November. So Dan Jones,
yes.
What's on your needles?
Well, here at the Bakery Bears, we like to do little tests for you, consumer tests, so that you know the answers to certain sort of important knitting questions. And one of the questions which I know many of you at home would have been thinking about is, what would happen if you fell asleep on top of a 4.5mm Knit Pro Cubics DPN?
Did you do that?
I did, and I can show you. This is
no!
what happened.
How did you do that?
I fell asleep on top of it.
Seriously though, how did you do? How? Where was it? Oh my God! I can't believe it. Look at that needle. That's outrageous.
We're professionals. We're here to do a job. This was a test that I knew people had been wondering about. What would happen? Would it hurt you? Would it go into you? Might it cause a problem? Well, I can tell you that you can sleep on it all night, and.
Where was it? It was in the bed.
Underneath me.
You slept all night with that underneath. You might have impaled yourself.
I'm definitely not the Princess and the Pea.
But how did it bend?
I think it was up here.
Oh, right.
So I think it was laid on it like that.
Oh, right.
So it was the top of my shoulder.
Is that not the most bizarre thing? Have you got another one?
Oh, I've got loads.
Right.
It's not an issue. I have 2 sets of 4.5mm DPNs. So we're fine.
You could have. What if it had been near your eye?
Yeah, well, don't worry, it'll never happen again. I'm knitting the angel hat, and I tell you something, I don't knit texture. Do I?
I don't knit texture.
How often do I knit texture
No, because
patterns?
this proves why you don't.
No.
Because
No.
you're total pants at it.
But if you don't knit texture regularly, how can you be good at it? It's true.
It's just knit some pearls.
Yeah, but no, that's not the point. The point is, it's a skill. Knitting texture is a skill because you have to do like the same thing over and over and over and over again. You know, like
You're not very good at knitting things that are like an
repetitive.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like a short repeat overall pattern, which
Yeah.
I love. You know, I love those.
Yeah, it makes me want to poke my eyes out. But the thing is, I've actually enjoyed knitting this hat.
Even though you've messed it up to like
Well, honey,
the nth degree.
I think you need. There'll be plenty of people at home who would look at that and go, "Oh, that looks fine,"
Okay.
because things have to be like, and it is. You should acknowledge that not all things.
You know,
all the time.
my question is, right,
Yes.
when you saw this ladder appearing, why didn't you say something to me?
Because it's not your job to try and fix it. It's mine. I've been trying to like tighten up the second stitch.
But I could have helped you.
What would you have said though?
Well, I would have shown you how because I don't get this, so I would have just shown you how I knit it, and that must be different.
What I'm pleased about, right? Oh, that's terrible English.
What I'm pleased about,
Yeah,
right?
what I'm pleased about, right, is if you look at the first hat that I knitted on DPNs, the ladder on that rib was terrible, and the ladder on that rib is not terrible. It's
it's
much better than it was. The ladder only becomes a problem when you get up here. This is when it's like immediately there's an issue.
But it's on all of your stitches. It's
I know.
not just on the pearls. It's on all of them. So this, and also is messed up the pattern all over the place. It's just all wrong. I can't even look at it.
That is the reflection of me not knitting.
It's a 3-row repeat.
No. But the point is, I don't knit textures regularly. In fact, I don't know the last time I did a textured anything.
No,
When was it?
I guess it's not even that though, because this is a free pattern. The angel hat is a free pattern. So it's a 3-row repeat. Rounds 1 and 2, knit 1, purl 1. Round 3, purl all your stitches. It's not even about that for me. It's about being able to. It's more about reading your knitting.
Yeah, well, I wasn't.
So it's not about the texture so much. It's about reading your knitting because
I wasn't reading
you
my
can
knitting.
so easily just read your knitting. It's 2 rounds, knit 1, purl 1.
That is what.
And then when you've done that, you purl around.
That is what I've now started doing. Because I was even starting to struggle on the decrease round.
Like you've done 3 rounds there
Yeah,
of
I know.
it. 3 rounds there, 3 rounds there. And like you say, you know, your brother won't be bothered, but it's just me and my
He won't be remotely
brain. I
bothered.
could not give this to someone as a gift if I knitted it. And you might be asking why Dan's doing this on double points. He could just use a circular.
I think most people will remember because
But-
I've waxed lyrical about this.
Yeah.
I'm very glad I've done this, and I actually think that I need to do another textured one
Right.
because I need to. I don't enjoy knitting texture, but I should be able to do it. You know, there's plenty of drumming rudiments I don't enjoy, but I still have to do them because it makes me an overall better.
Well, does it make you a better... I suppose...
It does.
What it would help you do is it would teach you how to read your knitting. And to
Yeah.
do that, I mean, I could show you in a minute how to read your knitting so that you don't even need to look at the pattern. And, you know, I think the problem is you were using a clicker, but you weren't going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3,
No,
which is what I would do.
I was doing maths, and when I got
You were
into
going-
the 20s, I
yeah,
started to get confused.
You were just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So every time you were like having to do a bit of maths.
Yeah, and I
and you were
kept
messing it up.
I kept getting it wrong.
So when I'm doing like a short repeat, like
My
a
3
4-row,
times table's not very good.
when I'm doing a 4-round repeat and I do need to do a clicker, say there's a lace in there or something, I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, zeroise it, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, well, I learnt that about 5 rows ago. You only learn that by doing it.
True.
So, you know, it's like mistakes. Do you know what? As a teacher, the thing that I got excited about the most was finding something that someone was
See,
weak
It's
at.
nice cuffed, isn't it?
Okay.
What?
Finding something that you're weak at
Yeah.
is brilliant
But
because then you can do something about it.
I guess the question is, unless somebody is, you know, can you by yourself get better at something just by practice, or would it be
Yes.
helpful if I showed you how to get better? Because
both things are good, but unfortunately what can often happen is you learn through repetitions. Just think of Tom Brady. It's about the repetitions. So yes, understand the technique, understand what you're looking to do, but you've got to do it, and you've got to do it over and over again.
I get that. It's just that if I can help you, I'm right here. I don't see
absolutely.
the point in not getting me to help you.
Honey, how often do I turn to you and say...
Well, it's not I don't care how
but
often
I do.
it is.
The point is I do. I don't want people thinking I've said that because I'm saying...
He does ask for help all the time. You do.
That's really
so
funny.
you probably thought, I'm always asking for help. I can't ask for help. I can do it myself.
That's not
Is
what
that
it was.
not?
What it was you have to make your own mistakes sometimes.
Yeah.
And then you learn from them. If you don't do that, if there's always someone there... Anyway, look...
So the yarn, in case you're interested, is West Yorkshire Spinners Colour Lab, and the colour is Racing Green.
It's perfectly pleasant. There's no problem with it at all.
So this is an Aran weight.
Yeah.
It's 96% British wool, 4% viscose. It's quite a toothy yarn.
Yeah. But I don't think the yarn is what's causing the issue with the ladders. I think it's the texture completely. Because I go back again to that last hat that I knitted.
Yeah.
There was no ladders on it.
No.
And that was a...
I understand what you're saying.
It was a similar weight. So the issue for me is I have to nail texture now.
The problem is because every needle is ending with a purl stitch, isn't it?
That doesn't help.
Regardless of the rounds.
I tell you the other thing that doesn't help is the yarn is quite it's slippy-ish on the needle.
Right.
It doesn't grip very well.
No, does it not?
It probably would on wood.
Right.
But on metal, it doesn't grip particularly well.
Right.
Granted, it's not coming off the needles, but what I mean is it's responding in a different way to perhaps a more expensive yarn.
I don't know. It doesn't have to be expensive too.
No, it doesn't have to be expensive. I wonder what would have happened if I'd knitted this with Let Lopi.
Same, probably.
No, I don't think it would. Because my experience with Let Lopi is pretty vast. And
think of the thought of a Let Lopi hat on my ears then.
Oh, it's horrendous.
Can't even do it.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely horrendous. But now I'm tempted. I'm tempted to do a hat.
Do one
Let
for
Lopi.
yourself?
No, not for myself. I'll do it for Dom or something.
No, you can't do that. You can't give...
Look, that's more than enough of that. It's about time that we saw another one of your perfect projects. So,
people are going to be saying, it doesn't matter if it's... I know what people are like, it doesn't matter if it's not perfect, Dan. It's fine.
What they get with us is they get two sides of the knitting coin.
That is true. Okay.
What else is on your needle?
Right.
In your absolutely
this is
spectacular bags.
This is very exciting. I've got 2 bags here to show you. It's the same bag but twice. So this bag is the bag that everybody is currently starting to make in our summer of stitching.
It's begun.
It has begun.
Oh, it's exciting.
So this
it's really exciting. Did you see all the messages?
Yes, so this is the Austin bag that I've designed, and all of our lovely patrons are currently starting on the road to creating their own Austin bag. So here is the first one that I made. So this is the sort of prototype, I suppose is the right word, but it's exactly the bag. Because before I made this, I did have lots of trial runs with various aspects of it. So this is the first one that I made completely. So we've got this panel which is slow stitched here with all these lovely bits of fabric, and these are stitched on by hand. And then it's the same on the back. We've got 2 panels, different fabrics on front and back.
And that course is running right now, that slow stitching course.
The slow stitching course.
So the first 2 parts have gone out, and the third part goes out next week.
Yeah. And then when we've created our slow stitching, so once you've seen all of the slow stitching videos, there's then a couple of weeks for you to allow time for everybody to get that stitched. And then we carry on and make the bag, which is done on a sewing machine. So we've got all of these lovely linens. I used 2 different linens. And then, so we sew it all together, but we've top stitched here and here by hand. And we've used the same thread that I used to sew the actual squares. This thread was lovely. It's an Aurifil, and it's like a multicoloured one. I saw this on Kate's video, Kate at the last Homely House YouTube channel. She uses this colour a lot, and it's called Marrakesh, and it's all these different colours. I don't know if you can see all the way along here, and it just worked perfectly for stitching. So yeah, we made this lovely bag. We're going to make this lovely bag together. It's got lace drawstrings because that just fit with the theme, you know, because ladies were very into their lace, weren't they, back in Jane Austen's day. So this was my prototype, and then I made another one within the videos, you know, demonstrating what to do. It's very, very similar. I just used a different top fabric. You can see this is slightly darker, this linen here, to this one. And I used different fabrics. And it ended up being really interesting. And again, it's on the back here. Because I think this one looks sort of wintry. And I think this one looks sort of spring-like with the colours. So that's really lovely. And it's just such a beautiful bag. I was so pleased. It took me, let me tell you, it took me forever to come up with this design and to just finalise what I wanted to do with this whole theme of Jane Austen. It took me forever, and I had so many days of like trying things and then saying, no, not good enough, or no, I don't want to do that. No, it doesn't feel right. Fabrics are wrong. This is wrong. I just had so much of that, but I was so pleased with the end result. I think it's such a beautiful bag. You know, lucky me, I've got two. You could make two if you wanted to, obviously. But yeah, I certainly won't be giving either of these bags away, because there's a lot of work. A lot of work goes into anybody that's going to make one of these, but particularly for me because, you know, I've designed it and all of the sort of background work as well. But it's just lovely. The linens are gorgeous. I used, I don't know if I can remember the name of the linen. Everybody knows who's making one.
What's in the bag, though?
Well, what's in the bag? I'm waffling on about the bag. Right, I'll show you what's in the other one, because it's the same, it's connected to the same project. So in the bag, the whole point of me doing the Summer of Stitching this way around, so we make the bag and then we knit a project, a Jane Austen themed project. So the idea is you make a bag and then you can put your project in the bag, and that's what I've got in here. So in this bag I've got Jane's mitts. So Jane's mitts are a DK weight pair of fingerless mitts that I designed with the thought of it being a pair of mitts that either Jane Austen herself might have worn when she was writing in the colder months, or I was inspired by a scene in Pride and Prejudice, the only one that, you know, I ever speak about, the Colin Firth version, when Jane goes to London for a few months, doesn't she? It's just after, I think she goes just after Christmas, and she stays in London with her aunt and uncle for a few months, and she's writing letters back and forth with Lizzie, and Lizzie's reading one of the letters one day, and she's sat on like the window ledge and she's got a shawl wrapped around her, cold outside, and it just made me think, oh, maybe Jane and Lizzie, when they're writing letters back and forth to keep their hands warm, because obviously there's no central heating back then, they might appreciate a little pair of fingerless mitts. So I've got one fully finished and I've blocked this just so I can show you, and then the other one is almost finished. So this is the first Jane's mitt. Now you might recognise this stitch pattern. So this stitch pattern that I've used, it's a slightly bigger version of the stitch pattern that I used for my scrappy quilt socks. This came before the scrappy quilt socks. I designed these quite a long time ago, and I loved this stitch pattern so much that I wanted to try it in socks, and hence that's where the scrappy quilt socks came from. You know, generally speaking, I don't like using the same stitch pattern in different designs. It's just not something that I like. Everything to be very individual. However, this just fit the theme, and I did think about redesigning these after the scrappy quilt socks went out.
The thing is, though, you said to me at the time that you wanted the scrappy quilt socks to be like something really, really special.
Yeah.
And you said that this stitch pattern was really, really special, and it was exactly what you wanted for those socks.
That's right.
So
that's right.
And
yeah.
also, these aren't available to buy.
No, that's right. These are not. These mitts are not a paid-for pattern. Look how lovely they are. They're not a paid-for pattern. So,
It just
you know,
is a special, exclusive free thing to accompany a tutorial series.
And the stitch pattern just fits so well with the theme, you know, that it's inspired by half square triangle quilts. And Jane Austen herself made a quilt, which I forgot to tell you is what inspired the bag. She made a quilt. They call it a coverlet, actually, if you look on the Jane Austen sort of website. Or if you just search Jane Austen quilt, but a design comes up, a quilt comes up, which is all diamonds with a big sort of floral motif in the middle. That's where the inspiration for this bag came from. But the whole quilt thing was what I had in my mind, and this stitch pattern, like I say, is inspired by half square triangle quilts, so that just worked perfectly, and I really loved them when I'd finished them. So the mitts are deliberately short here. Normally I knit mitts to a bit longer, but these are deliberately shorter because they're like writing mitts, and you want to have your fingers out, don't you, if you're writing. And funnily, Bryony she's taken them today because it's a bit chilly. She always takes fingerless mitts to school in cooler weather. But she's taken a pair today because she wears them when she does exams, because it's always cold in the hall and it's a bit chilly today. So she's taken a pair. So I know that wearing them when you're writing works because Bryony does it. So yeah, that's why they're a little bit shorter than normal. And what I've done, I spent ages with these mitts trying to get as neat as possible. Join here. Do you know, with the thumb gusset? This area here where you pick up those stitches that you've added on. It's always bugged me that it's not been the neatest there. And I've tried lots of different techniques, and this one now is really neat. I'm going to struggle to show you the sort of inside of the thumb. I'll do my best. Can you see how neat that is in there here? It's only a little thing, but I'm really happy with how that's turned out. The other thing that's different about these is the increases that I've used for the thumb gusset. I've just used a knit front back. I haven't done the left and right increases. You know, I've kept it really simple. I wanted to try what it looked like just using that one increase, and it looks brilliant, I've got to say. And the other thing I tried, just for a bit of fun, this is totally not necessary, I don't think, but actually I really like it. I put a little bit of shaping into the thumb. I don't know if you can see that. So it's got some thumb shaping as well, which actually works really well. It seems to fit my thumb really nicely, because it does obviously taper. You've got this thicker section here where your gusset increases are, and then your thumb does get narrower, doesn't it? So I thought I'd try that, and I really liked it, so I've included that in as well. So and the other one's right here. It's not far away from being finished. So it's DK weight. This pair that I've just shown you is knitted using Blacker Yarns Blacker Swan, which is one of my favourites. That's a DK. And the pink colour is Tea Berry. So it's Blacker Yarns Blacker Swan DK. So the pink is Tea Berry and the neutral is Sand. And it's just such a lovely yarn. I've used this yarn loads of times before. I always rave on about it, don't I? But it is super lovely to knit with. But so that pair I'm going to be finished with, and that pair will be used for photography for the pattern. But I need to knit another pair for the videos, and I've chosen a completely different yarn this time. I've gone with a hand-dyed DK, and these two, I should say, are from Kelly Lay. I purchased a few of these skeins. These are 50 grams DK, and I went with these two colours because it's completely different from the pink, but it sort of feels like more, like gardeny. Like Lizzie Bennett's always in the garden, isn't she? Or she's always out in nature. She loves just running around randomly, which I absolutely love about her. So I thought these were more kind of nature themed. So this yarn, it's a DK, but it's a non-superwash DK. It feels really lovely. I haven't used it yet. You can see I've not even wound them. But the two colours I'm going to use, this one I believe was Buttercream, and this one is Pickle. I love this green. It's got a lot of yellow tones in it. It's really lovely. So those are the two colours that I'll be knitting the mitts in the video when I do the videos, which we're going to be doing very soon.
Cool.
So yeah, they're the Jane's mitts.
Wonderful. I'm knitting, continuing, and I'm not going to bore you with this for too long because I'm just doing bodies, so you can start preparing your next...
I dropped my ball.
Of course. Start preparing your next project. I am partway through the body on my Godi, and it's literally eating yarn, as you can see. I mean, it's just totally... But it's like...
I did buy a couple of extra balls, I'm sure. Of
it's totally fine.
That colour.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't think you'll run out.
I'm sure I've got enough. It's the usual just brilliantness of not texture, plain knitting, but textured fabric because of the Letlopi. I mean, it is just the most wonderful thing to knit with, and it is without doubt my most favourite yarn to wear, which is crazy when you think about how scratchy it is. But I'm knitting it on, I think these are, they're Chiagus.
Chiagus?
Yeah, whatever that means. 4.5 mil round circular.
Round circular? What are you trying to say?
These needles. I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to say all the things.
They're Chiagu metal needles.
Thank
and it's
you.
a long circular.
Brilliant,
That's all
brilliant.
you need to know,
it's what
isn't
I
it?
always knit my jumpers on because it's just perfect for, going round and round and round, and also doing the colour work as well. I mean, it's just tremendous. But, brilliant yarn, great pattern, easy to follow. Couldn't recommend it enough. And I would strongly suggest everyone knits at least one jumper in their life with Letlopi.
Except me.
Except you. What else is on your needles?
Wow, that was quick.
Yes.
Excellent, well done. So the last thing I've got to show you... Oh, I forgot to say the mitts were a new cast on.
Thank you very much.
The last thing I want to show you is not a new cast on. It's Dan's socks that I'm knitting for him, and I've finished one and I'm on the second one. These are the socks. I'll show you. There you go. It's difficult to show. They're a slightly ribby pattern. I'll tell you about the pattern in a minute. So it looks a bit crazy. But I've finished one huge sock and I'm on the second one. Just not far off finishing the leg of the second one. So these socks I'm knitting using John Arbon Exmoor sock. I spoke about this at length the last time, so I won't sort of go on about the yarn itself this time. But the two colours that I'm using, the blue is called Plashes, and then the grey is Mizzle. And this yarn it's interesting, and the jury's still out, to be honest, on how I feel about this yarn. It's a mixture of...
I don't think it's out. I
don't really like it.
Well, yeah, the jury came back in weeks ago.
I don't like it.
And it's guilty.
It's a mixture of Exmoor Blueface, Corriedale, Zwarbles and nylon. And it is superwash. Yeah, machine wash on gentle wool cycle or hand wash. I won't be hand washing. They'll be going on 30 degrees gentle wash. Yeah. So the yarn is quite toothy. Saying that, I put this on my foot last night just for fun, and it didn't feel scratchy, and it doesn't feel scratchy on my arm, actually. Maybe a little bit. But compared to, like, Letlopi, it's like silk, It's really, I don't think it'll be a problem on your feet, even if you are a bit sensitive. My main concern with this yarn, and I hope I'm going to be proven to be wrong, I'm not sure how well it's going to wear, which sounds ridiculous considering the types of yarns the types of wool that's in there. It's all hard wearing, Corriedale, Zwarbles, Exmoor Blueface, and then there's a bit of nylon. There's only 10% nylon. But the main reason I'm saying that is because it does have this thick and thin thing going on. And when it goes thin, it goes really, really quite thin. And I did consider cutting out sections, but I would have just had so many joins if I'd done that. It's just not very consistent, and you can sort of see that in the fabric, I think. To me, I can see that it's more sort of slightly textured-y looking because you've got that slightly thick and thin thing going on. And, you know, my worry is when it goes really thin, that's, you know, going to wear, isn't it, quicker than the other areas. But I really hope that I'm proven wrong. We'll see. But I'm doing 8 rows a day on these at the moment, and then when I get closer to the end, I'll do more because I really want these to be finished for next time. But at the moment, I'm just plugging away 8 rows a day, and then I do the heel and the turn in a day, and then carry on doing 8 rows a day, and then finish with the toe. So I'll see how I get on, and we'll report back, obviously, on the wearability when Dan starts wearing these and how they wash and things like that. Yeah, so fingers crossed that they do wear okay. I've heard mixed reports in terms of wearability, so we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Makes you wonder about how Opal would wear on your feet. I don't imagine very well. But then maybe I'm talking complete rubbish, because Opal jumpers, people say they've had them 50 years.
You're not walking on them though,
No,
are
that's
you?
true. It's that downward pressure, isn't it? And
you would
the
think
rubbing.
that they would felt because of, you know, the heat and the friction, because it felts.
So maybe they will.
It felts in a second, doesn't it, like
Yes.
Opal, when you spit splice it.
Well, when I knit with it.
So maybe if you wore them on your feet, it might produce like a felted mat underneath.
Yeah.
And they might actually be all right. I don't know. Has anybody ever made socks out of Letlopi? Let us know. That'd be interesting.
And also, how itchy are they?
Kind of want to do that now, except I don't want to knit with Letlopi.
No. Look, it's time for a brand new episode of England, a Castle Nation.
Yes.
And I just wanted to take a moment, as we're midway through the series now, just to sort of let you know that I'm not making this up. What I do, I've literally been reading for 6 months. Granted, this is a subject which I know quite a lot about. And if you want to get a sort of deeper understanding of how I create these series, you can watch the making of Walking the Wall, which went into detail on, you know, the type of research I do and how I pull things together. But basically, what I do with anything that I talk about is I take everything from official records, and there's lots of those, so it's really easy to track through the story. But then also I tend to read from 2 or 3 sources about a particular person, so that then I'm very much sort of triple checking facts. So, you know, I'm not going to talk about someone's personality and say they're a particular way if I haven't seen that clearly in the sources and seen it from at least a couple of people, you know, historians who've written books about this. And that's really how all historians work. What they do is they look at the official records, they read all the books they can find, and you can see up here some of the books which I'm going to be using, and I've already used Castle by Mark Morris, Palaces of Revolution, which I'm really looking forward to reading. That's Simon Thurley. So as we get into the Civil War towards the end of the series, that's going to be coming in. Also, I mean, how cool is this? I didn't even realise. The Restless Republic by Anna Key.
Oh, yeah.
They're husband and wife.
Oh, so they are.
And they're next to each other on the shelf. Oh,
That's lovely, isn't it?
that couldn't be more perfect. I can't believe that's there.
We love Simon Thurley. He
brilliant.
used to be on Time Team quite a lot back in the day.
He's like a spaniel.
Yeah,
So
he's so
excitable.
excited about bricks.
It's
brilliant.
And he was head of English Heritage.
English
for a long time.
Heritage, wasn't it?
But just to sort of, I didn't want anyone watching this thinking it's just me giving my opinion. It's not. I consider myself now, and you know, I feel silly saying this, but I do consider myself a proper historian. My job is not to give you my opinion, it's to tell you the story. And what I do is I pull it in from all the different sources, and then I tell it in my own particular way. Right, that's enough of my...
No, I'm interested. I was interested.
Oh, okay. Well, that's nice. Yeah. Look, well, I think we should go and have some more of the story in my own particular way.
Let's.
So without further ado, let's go and meet the very first Tudor Queen.
Have you ever thought how the world we live in today came to be?
Why do so many of us live in houses made from bricks? How do most of us end up in a supermarket every week? How did some of us get the surnames we have? And why even do many modern day jobs exist?
The thing I love the most about history is we can get the answers to all this and so much more. It's always fascinated me when I've looked back through time to try and identify the things which relate to you and me today. And in this series, that's what we're going to do. We're going to try and marry the ancient with the modern. We're going to take a look at the end of the ancient world, a world that our ancestors knew so well. And we're going to tell the story of how it all started to change and become the modern world that you and I live in today.
"1,000 years ago, that is what the majority of England looked like. The houses we lived in were simple wooden structures, and the lives that most of us led were rustic and hard, to say the least. But a change was on the horizon. A technological innovation from the continent was about to burst onto the scene that would completely transform the lives of all of us.
The dawn of the castle had come, and in this series, we're going to tell its story. Where did these gigantic structures come from? Why were they invented? And why were so many built so quickly?
And then it gets really interesting, because how did this medieval structure, reminiscent of the buildings of ancient Rome, come to inspire completely the towns and cities of England, from the houses we live in to the shops we buy from?
Along the way, we're going to tell the story of the kings and queens who unsuspectingly ushered in this change. A change that would lead us on a path to something completely unexpected, to civil war and a republic. This is a truly epic tale that I can't wait to tell you. Welcome to England, a castle nation. Welcome back to England, a castle nation, on our second episode from the spectacular Middleham Castle. And I'm stood on top of the keep. It's 79 feet wide and 49 feet high. And whilst that might not sound like much, this is most certainly a view fit for a king. In our first episode from Middleham, we discovered how Ribald Rufus started over there by building a Motte and Bailey castle, whilst he built his spectacular home that became known as the Windsor of the North. We also discovered that it passed from Ribald Rufus's family into the hands of the powerful Nevilles, and along the way it became home to a king in King Richard III. We also uncovered the story of King Edward VI and his pretty tremendous job in trying times as the first monarch who was not just King of England, but also head of the Church of England, after his father had, of course, got rid of the old ways and brought in the new Protestant ways of the Church of England. But as we left the story, unfortunately, King Edward VI had died of tuberculosis, and the kingdom was left in turmoil. Just a short walk from Midlum Castle lies this wonderful church. It's dedicated to St Mary and St Elkelda. Now, in 1553, when King Edward died, the parishioners here were only just getting used to the brand new Church of England. But now a new monarch arrived who declared that anyone who was a Protestant who believed in the Church of England was a heretic and they should be burnt at the stake. How on earth did this happen? And what effect did this have on the poor people of England who just wanted a quiet life out here in the country? We'll find out later on in the episode. Because when I left you last time, King Edward VI was dead, and he'd left England in a little bit of turmoil because they expected to have a new queen, either Princess Elizabeth or Princess Mary. But it turned out to be neither of them, because in a shocking twist, Prince Edward decided that the new queen would in fact be his cousin, Lady Jane Grey. The problem was, no one had asked her. This is a tale with more twists and turns than you can shake a stick at. And to find out all about it, let's head to the banks of the River Ure. Welcome, everyone, to the banks of the River Ure. The start of so many settlements in England took place on the side of the banks of a river because thousands of years ago, people like you and me came here to a spot around here to cross the river. And over time, as they kept crossing the river, slowly little bits of settlements start to build up. When the Romans arrived in 43 AD, they fortified these river crossings so they could control them. And then fast forward 1,000 years, when the Normans arrived, bringing with them the technology to build castles, which was inspired by the Romans, they too chose to build castles at the spots where so many of those Roman fortifications had been built. But that is in the dark and distant past, because the year is 1553. And we are perhaps one of the many husbandmen managing the fields of Midlum, and we're making our way home after a hard day at work. Perhaps sunset has just arrived. It would be if we were just about to make our way home. And word has just come to us that King Edward VI is dead. And the queen that we thought was going to inherit the throne is not the queen who's going to be crowned at all.
King Edward VI was dead, and he'd left England with quite the conundrum. Ignoring the wishes of his father, who'd set out his heirs clearly on his own death, Edward forced through a law changing the succession so the crown of England would pass to the heirs of his aunt, Henry VIII's younger sister. So who was it who received the most welcome news of finding out they were now royalty? It was Edward's 16-year-old cousin, Jane Grey. How did she take the news? When the ruling councillor informed her that she was queen, she burst into tears and ran out of the room. true heir was Princess Mary, Henry VIII's eldest daughter. She was stunned to discover Jane Grey was being pronounced Queen in the towns of England. The people of England were equally stunned, and many started gathering at Princess Mary's home, urging her to fight for her birthright. An army started to form outside Mary's home. As they marched across Norfolk en route to a local castle, something unbelievable started happening. Towns across England were not accepting Jane Grey as Queen, but instead proclaiming Mary the first Queen of England. Back in London, confusion reigned. The ruling council was trying to honour the wishes of King Edward, but the people of England had made it clear they were not going to accept it. So one by one, the council shifted their allegiance to Mary. Jane Grey was in the Tower of London for her safety as Queen when she heard the news. She'd no choice but to abdicate. She went from a queen to a prisoner in the Tower in the time it took her to sign her abdication. The succession had been honoured without any bloodshed. England had her new queen, and her name was Mary Tudor.
As the height of summer dawned, Mary made her triumphant return into London. She was accompanied by 1,000 retainers, all wearing purple surcoats. And to affirm her succession, she was also accompanied by her sister Elizabeth. Just 5 days after his death, King Edward was now laid to rest in Westminster Abbey by a sister who thought that this was divine intervention. Mary just knew that it was time to return to the Catholic Church. And to do that, she was going to need to be surrounded by counsellors who would support her. So she started to appoint people who'd stuck by her through the wilderness years. And she also released lots of people who'd been locked up by her father for supporting Catholicism, of course, because Mary now intended to reinstall it in England.
There was, though, a problem. Mary felt she needed the support of a man, and you can't really blame her when you consider the world she was living in. In the absence of a husband, she turned to her cousin, Emperor Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire. Charles ruled over most of Europe, really only France and England stood alone. So in her first year as Queen, Mary's chief counsellor was Simon Renard, Charles V's ambassador to the English court. This was of course done in secret. If the public found out, there would be a rebellion, because it could be easily argued that the Holy Roman Empire was now steering the future of England.
Within just 2 weeks of her arrival in London as Queen, Renard was whispering in Mary's ear about her sister Princess Elizabeth. He said that she was clever and sly, and she might have aspirations to be Queen herself. The problem was just completely religion. Mary was a devout Catholic, but Elizabeth was a Protestant. She was, of course, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, who had inspired the Reformation, the formation of the Protestant faith in England. These two sisters were very much two sides of the religious coin that was splitting England in two in the Tudor period.
Word got to Princess Elizabeth of Mary's growing concern about her loyalty. Now, I must stipulate that up until this point, Mary was very accommodating to the population at large on their chosen religious beliefs. But when it came to her sister, this was a threat. In just a few months, the world had turned on its head. To King Edward VI's, Mary had been the outcast due to her Catholicism. Now it was Elizabeth who could be a figurehead for Protestant rebellion. This was not something Elizabeth would entertain, so she went to her sister to explain herself. No one had ever taught her the Catholic ways. If she could be educated in the beliefs, she would consider changing. Mary was thrilled with her resolve.
But the goodwill didn't last. Mary asked Elizabeth to attend Mass, and Elizabeth agreed, supposedly out of fear. She never went. She made excuses. She said she was ill. So word started to spread at court that Mary was going to ban Elizabeth from the succession of the English crown due to her Protestant, her heretical beliefs. Elizabeth realised it was just not safe to stay at court, and so she asked to be allowed to leave. Mary allowed her, and the sisters parted on affectionate terms, but trust between the two was disappearing fast.
Mary realised she had to have an heir. If she did, Elizabeth would no longer be an issue. So she approached her cousin for advice. He suggested his son, Prince Philip of Spain, as a potential husband. He was 26 years old and a nephew of Mary's mother, a fact which actually drew Mary to him. The Council of England was appalled. They argued strongly that her husband should be English, but Mary told them it was entirely vain for them to nominate a prospective husband from their own fancy. Any husband would be selected from Mary's own free will. These are commendable sentiments, but Mary wasn't really following them. She was just doing what her cousin had told her.
In January 1554, an imperial delegation arrived for the signing of the marriage treaty, but they were not accepted well by anyone at court or the people of London. They were so badly received by the people of England that boys pelted the delegation with snow as they made their way through the wintry scene in London that year. One chronicler of the time said after the marriage treaty was signed that this was news disliked by all.
The country was so ill at ease with a Spanish marriage that a mob rose up and marched on London. As support grew for the overthrow of the Queen, the rebels chose Princess Elizabeth as their potential new monarch. By February, it looked like London may fall, so Queen Mary took the initiative and set off out into the city to talk to her people. She told them, "If subjects may be loved as a mother loves a child, then assure yourselves that I earnestly love and favour you. I cannot but think you love me too, and together we shall be able, I have no doubt, to give these rebels a speedy overthrow. I do not desire marriage, but if I were to produce a successor, I know it would bring you comfort. Good and faithful subjects, pluck up your hearts. Don't fear our enemies, for I assure you that I fear them nothing at all."
Mary's queenship was defined in this moment of conviction and clarity, and the crowds turned immediately on their heads and they were like overjoyed, screaming, "God save the Queen" and "God save the Prince of Spain." They rose up and they showed once again, the people of England showed that they would not have a queen forced upon them. They'd done it with Jane Grey and now they'd done it with this rebellion. And Mary now was left to reap her revenge, and it was brutal on anyone who'd been involved. There's written documentation at the time that said there were so many executions that the smell in London was not very pleasant at all. The rebellion also brought to an end the really sad story of Jane Grey, because she hadn't been involved. She'd been locked up in the Tower, and Mary had, absolutely said, "I'm not going to kill someone completely innocent," and family at the end of the day. She was a cousin. But the problem was, Jane's father had taken part in this rebellion, and now Mary's counsellors all started whispering in her ear, saying she can't be left alive. She could end up at the head of another rebellion. So Jane, innocent of everything, never really done anything wrong, was taken to the Tower of London and beheaded.
The woman at the heart of this rebellion, though, was Princess Elizabeth, and evidence against her was mounting. It's not clear what her knowledge was of the rebellion, but we know for certain no evidence was found that showed she'd supported or taken part in it. That, though, didn't matter to the Catholic councillors now advising Mary, so Elizabeth was imprisoned in the Tower of London. As the pressure mounted, it was expected she would either confess or evidence would be found, but neither of these things happened. Queen Mary should be commended in a sense for not acting against her sister without proper evidence. So perhaps to remove her from the focus of the council, she was moved to Woodstock, where she would live under house arrest for the next 11 months.
But what about the common man and woman, the people who lived in places like Midland, like this? How did Mary's reign affect them? Well, when you consider the importance of religion in Tudor England, The impact was just huge. To find out more, let's go take a little look at a rather special church. Welcome everyone to St Mary's Church, sat right in the heart of Midland. Now this really unassuming little place is so similar to any of the parish churches that you might find in towns and villages all across England. But this place is different because it used to sit right alongside Westminster Abbey, St George's Chapel and Windsor Castle, and so many others. There's actually 22 other what's known as royal peculiars.
So what exactly is a royal peculiar? Well, it's a church which answers directly to the reigning monarch, not the local dean or regional archbishop. You might wonder how this tiny church became a royal peculiar. It's because of King Richard III, who once used to live at Middleham Castle.
You see, Richard was a very pious man, and when he became king, it was a foregone conclusion that this gorgeous little place would join those illustrious ranks and become a royal peculiar. And it actually remained so for about the next 350 years. So you can imagine how proud the population of Middleham must have been coming here to their little church in 1554.
Now, throughout this series, we've learnt so much about the Tudor men and women who would have perhaps attended this church, from the clothes they wore to the beds they slept in and the fires they warmed themselves in front of. But what about their names?
In 1066, only Christian names were used in England. It was the arrival of William the Conqueror, who of course brought with him the castle as well, that surnames were introduced. And the reason why he did it was because he wanted to be able to tax people. Christian names were difficult to track because they were so common, but if you added a surname as well, it made it easier to know who someone was and what they owned. And he wrote all this down in something called the Domesday Book. The problem was, how did people suddenly get surnames? And the answer is really quite interesting.
Names like Johnson, Williamson and Phillipson are patronymic, taken from the name of their father. So the first man to take the name Johnson, for example, was John's son. Others, though, took their names from where they lived, like Hill, who lived near a hill. Jobs were also popular, like Taylor, Smith or Baker. There are lots of less obvious ones that still exist, like Mercer, who was a dealer of fabrics, Tucker, who was a finisher of cloth, or Fletcher, who was a man who made arrows. The list is actually vast.
It was, though, the Tudor era which entrenched the use of surnames, because up until the Tudor era, they'd been interchangeable, because it was Domesday Book in 1086 when they'd first sort of been written down. But then in 1538, in a new Act of Parliament by Thomas Cromwell, who we've already met in this series, it was decreed that churches like this, here at St Mary's, they had to start recording births, marriages and deaths. And in one move, in one swoop, Suddenly, the ability for us all to trace our family trees here in England today was made so much more straightforward. But the year is 1554, and the question is, how did the church change with the arrival of Mary Tudor? And the answer is profoundly.
By the end of the summer, gone were services in English and back came the Hebrew and Latin. The Reformation was over and the Catholic Church was back with a vengeance. Catholics had been persecuted as heretics on the formation of the Church of England. Now Mary would set about wreaking revenge on anyone who refused to denounce the Church of England and turn back to the Catholic Church. Mary empowered the Bishop of London to develop a framework which could be used across the country for returning to the Catholic fold, and he quickly became obsessed with looking for heretics.
In one of Mary's first acts of Parliament, she repealed her brother's legislation which had caused Kett's rebellion with the introduction of that new prayer book which we covered in our last episode. And you would have thought that after 19 years of the Church of England, of all these new strange ways with services in English, all the colourful things being stripped away, no more saints' days, only worshipping one God, you would have thought that the congregations would have been ready for a return to the old ways, to Catholicism. But Mary had a problem.
For the congregations to accept another change to their religious lives, they would need to be enticed, and Mary and her clergy failed to recognise this. All they had to offer was an unpopular mix of nostalgia for an irrecoverable past, and worse still, a version of Catholicism more Spanish than English. In 1554, Mary finally achieved what she'd hoped for since becoming queen. England returned to the Catholic Church. On the 30th of November, England was absolved for its years in the wilderness in a service at Westminster Abbey. According to one onlooker, it moved a great number of the audience with sorrowful sighs and weeping tears, and this wasn't because they were happy.
Most people wanted a quiet life, and they didn't want to be burnt as a heretic. So everything on the face of it looked pretty rosy. Mary was queen, Catholicism was back. All she needed now was an heir. For that, Mary would need a husband, and she had one ready-made in Prince Philip of Spain, who was actually already family. So the only question was, would this be a marriage of love or convenience? We'll find out when I see you later on in the show for part 2. So thank you so much for watching so far, and I'll see you later for more England, a Castle Nation.
What a start! Oh yes! Oh, do you know what? That church, spectacular.
I love the church.
Absolutely
Like
amazing.
church.
Royal peculiar as well. So funny to think of that
It's an odd
alongside.
phrase, isn't it?
Yeah, it's peculiar. So funny to think of that alongside Westminster Abbey.
Yeah.
And, you know, all the other... But then when you think about it, logically, it was the home of a king, and just because he wasn't the king anymore, it had still been the home of a king, and so it stayed a royal peculiar.
Yeah.
I made Kay laugh with my description of names.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Hill. Live next to a hill.
Live next to a hill. It just sounded really funny when he said it.
There's other ones
Obviously
too.
makes perfect sense.
Green normally live next to the village green or a large expanse of grass.
Quite literal, isn't it?
It is.
And then we were thinking of other random words to see whether people lived near them, to see whether there was like such a surname.
But look, there's so much more to
Interesting,
come.
really interesting.
Because when we come back in part 2, it's going to be time to get Queen Mary. I keep calling her Princess Mary because she's been princess for so long.
Right.
Time to get her married. That'll be lovely.
Very lovely.
Right now, though, it's time for a rather wonderful. Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
Well, I've got 3 things.
3 wonderful things.
I know. So we'll start with, I finished the crochet blanket that I was making, the baby blanket. So this is the Rainbow Ripple baby blanket, a free pattern by Celeste Young, and it's crocheted. It's a 12-pointed star. It's massively popular on Ravelry. There was like oodles of thousands of projects. So if you are a crocheter, then chances are you could well have made one or several of these. So I finished it, and I did decide just to end it on the grey. It's really quite big, actually, which is why I decided to end it at that point. It's plenty big enough for a baby blanket. I hope the colours are all right. Do you think?
They're for a boy.
Yeah, it's a boy. The baby's a boy, so I went with more slightly more masculine colours. So I used, this was really interesting, right? I used Stylecraft Special Chunky, which is just an acrylic. I wanted to use an acrylic that could just be thrown in the wash. You never know what's going to get on baby blankets, dear, and it needs to be a really robust yarn. And so the colours, I started in the middle with cream, then the beigey colour is parchment, the golden colour is camel, sage, and then graphite. Something weird happened with the sage. I mentioned this last time, right? But it became even more obvious that something was off with this yarn. Because with that sage section, the green section here, I used 85 grams in total. And I commented, I think, last time that I thought the yarn looked a bit thinner than the others. So I didn't even use one full ball. So I weighed what I'd got left, and I used 85 grams for this section. For the grey, this is my second ball, I used 160 grams. I had 40 grams of the second skein left. So for the grey, I used 160 grams. For the green, I used 85 grams. For this golden colour, I had less than that left. So I would estimate that I maybe used around 90 grams for the gold. So how is that even possible? So let's say I used 90 grams for the gold, 85 for the green, and then 160 grams for the grey. So something is clearly off with this grey ball of yarn, and I felt like it was way thinner, and I measured the length of the sections and it's shorter than all of the others. It's not my gauge, it's definitely not my gauge, because I compared it to all of the sections and it's shorter by just over 1/4 inch than all of the others. It feels thinner when you just feel it. It feels way thinner. If you told me this was DK, I would believe you, and that would sort of make sense, wouldn't it? Because there's much more yardage on a DK. Not sure what's happened there, but in any case, no one's going to notice, nobody's going to say anything, but I just thought I'd mention it. So that's all finished.
Lovely.
And ready to be gifted next week.
Exciting.
So I'll be packaging this up. I didn't wash it in the machine or anything. I just laid it out and gave it a bit of a spray block, because it's acrylic. So I always think with acrylic you can't really block it properly, can you, with acrylic? But it definitely helped just make everything look a bit neater. So that's that all done. I then finished my strawberry socks that I was knitting. These are all done. These didn't take me long at all. How lovely are these? So I dyed this yarn myself, and I have actually done these 2 colourways in my favourite colourways. I believe it was in episode 178 where I've dyed these colours.
Baker Bear patrons, it's linked in the show notes below, because if you're a gold or platinum patron,
Yeah.
you get a special edition.
Okay. So if you wanted to dye, if you do dabble in dyeing your own yarn and you wanted to dye these colours, and you can do that, you can follow along with me. And I used my pattern called Short and Sweet Socks, which was a design that I used during Knitty You in 2020. And I've knit it a few times now. It's just this really pretty eyelet design. And look perfect for strawberry seeds.
Yeah.
And this is the second pair of socks like this that Bryony will have had. These are for Bryony. And She still wears the other pair, but they're really wearing out and they've faded a bit because they've been washed a million times. So I thought I would make her another pair. So they're all done. And I did buy some strawberry fabric, actually. I was a bit obsessed with strawberries. And I found this one, and it's by, I always get this wrong, Acufactum. It's so pretty. Does it say what the... Oh, it's in some foreign language. But I'll show you the print. It's got strawberries on there, but there's also what looks like a sort of green radish and some greenery and some flowers. But it's really, really pretty, isn't it? So they took me not very much time at all. I cast them on 15th of May and I finished them on the 3rd of June. So that's really good going for me. And then the final thing off my needles is, of course, my little Scarflette.
Do you know what?
Isn't it sweet?
Really cool on.
It's really sweet, isn't it?
It's super cool.
So this is the Endy Bits Scarflette, and I've knit it using 8 different yarns. I showed you this last time. It was almost finished last time. But yeah, I used 8 different fingering weight yarns, and it's just this little skinny scarf. And it's really lovely to wear. I might keep it on because it is a bit chilly today. Isn't it pretty? So it's long enough to wrap around a couple of times
That's
and
the
then
key thing,
and then
isn't it?
to tie.
It's that length.
It's the length.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure. It came out, I think, at about 62 inches long. So it's nice and long. You can wrap it twice and then tie it. And it's just a cute little scarf, isn't it? It's lovely. I've seen a couple of people
It's
already
very
starting
elegant,
to make
actually.
this. Yeah, and I would love to do it in just a single colour. I think
Yeah.
it would look really pretty. In just like a really pretty speckled would look great, or a tonal. A little red one for Christmas might be quite fun, might it? So yeah, that pattern went out on the 1st of June to our patrons and it has been very happily received.
And what's so exciting now is it's now time to look forward to the final platinum pattern of this year's collection.
That's true, because the Advent one is the 1st of next year. So, yeah, the one that's coming out on 1st of September is the waffle socks, because of all the waffling. And they're going to be a DK weight pair of socks with a really pretty waffly pattern on.
Amazing.
I think that's a given, isn't it? That's what they're going to be. So that'll be fun for September for some cosy sock knitting.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Right, it's time to get back to Midland. And yes, the moment I've been looking forward to all series, because I really have grown. I've really grown. I did not anticipate that I would.
Love it so much.
No, Mary.
Mary. Yeah.
I did not. I don't know if I mentioned last time, but I struggled finishing off this particular series, this particular episode, because I didn't want to read about what happens at the end. And I won't tell you what, because I'll spoil it. So without further ado, let's get back for the final part of our lovely story of Queen Mary and her brand new husband-to-be, King Philip.
Welcome back, everyone, to England, a castle nation. We've made our way back inside Midland Castle, the Windsor of the North. And in the summer of 1553, when Prince Philip of Spain and Queen Mary of England were preparing to marry, this was part of their royal estates. Now, before we continue with their story, I'd love to show you a couple of my favourite places in this wonderful castle.
What makes Middleham so important in our story is it demonstrates so clearly the transition between castles seen solely as a fortification to them being considered homes. As we discovered last time, apartments were built featuring all the latest innovations.
That included grand staircases to take you from one floor to the next, and one of my favourites lies just up here.
What makes these stone steps so special is they're about 600 years old, and King Richard III himself used these to get up to his bedroom and private chambers.
Now, there were many kitchens in Middleham over the years, but the earliest was found in the basement of the keep. And when I think of a medieval kitchen, I think of huge fireplaces, hogs roasting, and cauldrons bubbling. And let me tell you, the kitchen here at Middleham does not disappoint.
When Middleham Castle was first built, this kitchen would have felt really dark. It was only lit from the window we can see ahead of us. Two huge cauldrons sat close by here and here, ready for food to be prepared. Once the cook had done everything he needed to do, they would have been lifted onto the great fireplace, which we can see the remains of here. There would have been wooden tables nearby ready for food preparation, but of course you needed a water supply, which we can see here. This was the kitchen's well. Water would have been pulled up by a bucket as required. But a kitchen, though, also needs a sink, somewhere to wash things and also drain things away, and it was positioned here. It used to drain out through the wall into a trough which sat on the outside of the keep.
It's easy to imagine cauldrons bubbling, and they must have been huge as well, but cauldrons getting prepared for the fire and then getting moved across and maybe bubbling on the fireplace. There definitely would have been a hog roasting there on that huge, it just must have been so hot. It would have been hot and dark, but hopefully the smells that were coming out of here were delicious. Now, as the years progressed and eating habits changed, the kitchens moved away from the keep, and this was actually turned into a wine cellar. And speaking of wine, we have a wedding to celebrate because it's time to get Princess Mary, Queen Mary now, married.
The first wedding of an English reigning queen took place here in Winchester. Whilst everything at court seemed rosy, the Queen's advisors were concerned a marriage in London would spark protests. The ceremony was one of unparalleled pomp and extravagance. It was based closely on those of Catherine of Aragon, Mary's mother, to her first husband, Prince Arthur of England, more than 50 years earlier. The new King of England was the 27-year-old Prince Philip of Spain. He was described at the time of the wedding as having a broad forehead, grey eyes and a manly countenance. He is so well proportioned that nature cannot work a more perfect pattern. This was a marriage that promised much. In the weeks that followed, the new king and queen grew closer than anyone expected. This marriage of convenience was proving most agreeable to them both. One of Philip's Spanish courtiers wrote at the time, "They are more in love than words can say. His Highness never leaves her, and when they travel, he's always by her side, helping her to mount and dismount." As the year came to an end, everything was looking wonderful. Mary had achieved everything she could have hoped for and so much more. She had a husband she loved, a Catholic kingdom, and the love of her people. Only one thing was missing, an heir to the throne. So what if Queen Mary became pregnant? It sounds like a movie's climax, doesn't it? But that is what happened. Or did it?
At Christmas in 1554, Queen Mary wrote to her father-in-law to announce that she was pregnant. The country, in fact, all of the Western world, was in raptures. With the arrival of an heir, Mary's dynasty was complete. And with that security, with that knowledge of an heir, it was time to welcome back Elizabeth into the fold. When the sisters first met, it was a fraught meeting, but they parted as friends. And as the birth date now approached, as was tradition, Mary disappeared into her rooms to prepare for the arrival of what she hoped, I'm sure, would be a son.
The problem was, no baby arrived. As the height of summer came, Mary became more and more reclusive, sitting in one place for hours in the depths of depression and anxiety. As the weeks passed, the mood became one of despair. Rumour started to spread that the Queen was dead. It turns out the Queen was never pregnant at all. She'd been fooled into thinking she was. Maybe it was wishful thinking. As she ate for two, her size increased, and no one ever thought to challenge the notion.
This was the moment that Queen Mary's reign turned. The public felt like they'd been lied to. Queen Mary was now anxious and depressed, and she started to see rebellions around every corner. And the people that she feared the most were the Protestants. Catholicism was about to take on a ferocious edge.
It began with the canon of St. Paul's Cathedral, who refused to accept the Pope as leader of the church, so he was burnt at the stake. It was a brutal sight witnessed by streets lined with crowds, including his wife and 11 children. This was a scene that would be repeated 300 times during Mary's reign. Sadly for Mary, it only proved to strengthen the resolve of those who believed in the new ways, that of the Church of England. It wasn't just men who were targeted. Margaret Polly was the first female victim. She was burnt at the stake for maintaining that the Holy Bible never mentions the Catholic Church. The funny thing is, Mary never expected so many people to burn. She'd hoped that they would all recant. Most did not, and their sacrifice stirred the admiration of many. Interestingly, faith in the Church of England became associated with the defence of English liberty.
Passions were raised by the burning of so many heretics. It was starting to drive people towards the Church of England. The stress on Mary at this time was absolutely huge. The history books tell us she was struggling to sleep, she was losing weight, and she was writing constantly to her husband, who was away in Spain, governing and dealing with his other lands.
Into this mess, another rebellion rose up, and this time Elizabeth was well aware of the plan. She could and perhaps would have been taken to the Tower and executed by many previous monarchs, but Mary had a problem. A failed pregnancy meant Elizabeth was her heir. If Elizabeth was removed, the crown would pass to Mary, Queen of Scots, who was married to the Dauphin of France. If that happened, England would become part of France, and that was something nobody wanted.
The underlying problem was Mary's father-in-law was at war with France, which meant Mary's husband Philip was at war with France. And that forced Mary herself to go to war with France. Now, this was something the ruling council of England desperately did not want to do, but Mary forced their hand. So she gave Philip troops and money, and in summer 1557, they got ready to say goodbye.
The tearful parting of husband and wife happened here at Dover Castle. After spending a few days preparing, Philip set sail at 3 a.m. on the 6th of July. as husband and wife parted, little did they know it was the last time that they would ever see each other. Philip's war with France brought unexpected consequences for Mary. She had been, throughout her life, a devout Catholic, and her greatest triumph was restoring England to Catholicism. The problem was the Pope was allied with France, and so a war with France was a war with the Pope, and he would never forgive Mary for involving England. This political unrest in the most sacred of places had catastrophic consequences for any chance of a Catholic revival in England. As these events unfolded, the Venetian ambassador wrote a report on England that survives to this day. He praised Mary for her devotion and piety. He called her valiant and brave, but she was prone to great melancholy. Clearly, she was struggling with the stress of the job. He said she had an evil disposition towards her sister Elizabeth, even though she pretended otherwise. But what grieved her most of all was the loss of the affection of the people of England. In the words of the ambassador, it had once been so extraordinary that love like that had never been greater shown. But all that was now forgotten. Mary had become a forsaken queen.
Just 6 months after the Venetian ambassador prepared his dossier on England, Queen Mary became pregnant once again. She wrote in January 1558 to her husband, and he wrote back immediately, exclaiming nothing had ever given him so much joy. But at the back of his mind, he wondered, was she wrong again? As the weeks progressed, Mary's health deteriorated. She was suffering memory loss, loss of vision, headaches. This was no pregnancy. Whilst they didn't realise it at the time, we know today through all the documents and court notations that were made on Mary's symptoms that she was most probably suffering from cancer.
As summer progressed, Mary grew weaker, and in August she caught influenza. She was compelled to write a will, and for the first time she acknowledged Elizabeth as her heir. She'd fought most of her life to avoid this, but now realising that time was short, she had no choice. Mary had learnt from the mistakes of her brother. Trying to pass the kingdom off to a chosen heir would never work.
Princess Elizabeth was the one true king's daughter, and as such, she would be the new queen. Queen Mary received the last rites just before midnight on November the 16th, and as the sun was beginning to rise just a few hours later, she died. She was just 42, but what a life she'd led.
She had been born into the then happy marriage of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. She'd lived through her father's many wives, developing great friendships with Jane Seymour and Catherine Parr. Distraught at her father's actions as he turned away from the Pope, she'd remained true to her faith no matter what the cost. Then, as England's first true queen, she paved the way for all who would come after her with laws that allowed a woman to rule as king. Her crowning glory, though, was leaving England with a clear succession, which no one could argue with. England would crown Princess Elizabeth, daughter of Anne Boleyn, their second Tudor queen.
Since her father's death just 11 years before, the country had been racked by turmoil. And what would the future bring? Would it be more Game of Thrones-esque backstabbing, political turmoil and confusion with religion? Or would Elizabeth I's reign signify a golden age in art and literature? We'll find out next time in a brand new episode at a brand new destination. So I'll see you next time for more England, a Castle Nation.
Whoa! What a story! Oh my goodness!
What a sad end. Really.
It means so. Do you know what? It just meant so much. Or the whole. I felt like I know her. You know. If think back through this series, she started out, deserted by her father, and she separated from her mother, and then. She then, becomes friends, really good friends with Jane Seymour. Do you remember she gave her cucumbers? And they were like giving each other gifts and really getting on well. And then again, she had to do it all again with Catherine Parr, but she did. I mean, I've really felt like we've got to know her, so to then sort of see how it was just so weird how everything's going great, everything's perfect. And then you can sort of see in her head, it'd be perfect if I got pregnant.
I know.
I am pregnant. And then that was it. That was the catalyst.
The poor lady obviously had a lot of demons going on in her head, which we can all relate to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I tell you what I'm now, though, really excited about, because I read last night, a description of the new Queen's demeanour, and it sounded like you.
Really?
It did.
Which Queen is this?
Elizabeth.
Oh.
I'll read it to you, and we'll get into this when the Castle Nation comes back, the episode after next. But I really hope you enjoyed that. I loved that whole experience at Middleham. It's been marvellous. And next time, brand new destination as we get into the real star of the Tudor age. And it's sort of interesting that she chose not to use that as her, because we know it's the Elizabethan age. And that's because the whole Tudor age very quickly was seen as not great at all. Henry VIII. Mary Tudor got so much bad press, but I don't think it's completely deserved, because I think up until that point of the Phantom Baby, everything was going great.
It's funny, isn't it? We didn't use Elizabethan age for Queen Elizabeth II, did we? Only for the first.
Yeah.
And we don't use it for any other name. We don't.
Well, it tends to happen a little bit after.
Right.
That tends to be when it starts to be referred to as that, certainly in my experience.
Right.
So perhaps historians will give Elizabeth II's age a moniker, if you like.
Yeah.
Anyway, look.
Interesting.
Next time, Kay's Classic Bakes returns.
Yes, indeed.
And I can tell you it's great, because I've been eating it.
Yes.
Oh, it's like retro.
It is.
Summer goodness.
It is absolutely retro.
Bring it on, baby.
Blast from the past.
Can't wait.
Deliciousness.
To get there, though, we have to get through the Endy Bits and then come back for the next show.
We do.
So it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits, everybody.
Oh, yes. So Kay's got some yarn.
I do. Now, this is really interesting, and I'm very excited to try this. And I really want to race through Dan's socks, because these will be for Dan. I was on Wool Warehouse the other day, and like everybody, I always look at new yarns. This one popped up, and I dismissed it at first because I thought, I don't really buy that yarn anymore, because I don't really like it anymore. But the range appealed to me, because I really liked the range under this name that they did before. And also the label looks like an older label of theirs that they used to do. It's Opal sock yarn. I'll not keep you in suspense any longer. And you know how I felt Opal had sort of changed a bit? Well, I bought 2 skeins of their... I don't like saying this word. Thank you. Fine. I don't like saying this word, but it's this range. And they're based on paintings. So this painting here is this one. And then I've got this one as well, which is this lovely painting. So this bluish one is number 4054. And the more yellowy one is 4056. And they came, and I was like, gosh, it looks really plump and lovely, and not like skeins that I've had in more recent times from them. And I said to you, didn't I? Gosh, this is going to be so exciting to try, because what if it's gone all lovely again like it used to be?
I hope so.
Because I pulled out this skein in here, right? And this is, I've used a tiny bit of this, but this is a recent one that I bought. But you can see the difference. It's like loose on the skein. It's quite flat looking. Whereas, look at the difference. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. It just feels different. This one feels sort of thin. This one feels plump and bouncy. So I'm going to cast one of these on for Dan's next socks, and I will report back. But that's very exciting news, isn't it?
Very exciting.
We'll see what happens.
Oh, yes. So we mentioned it already, Summer of Stitching is underway.
Yes.
Come and join us. Actually, the first course in the Summer of Stitching is available to all patrons. So for just $2, you can come and find out what all the fuss is about. If you like it, you can upgrade to $5 patron and stay all through the whole of the Summer of Stitching, making the bag and then making the gorgeous Jane's mitts, which Kay's already shown you. Also, as well, our next show, we've already mentioned, it's going to feature Kay's Classic Bakes. Don't miss that. And I think that's just about it.
Very
exciting. Thank you so much for watching. It's been wonderful to see you all. Take care of each other.
Yes.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks with more.
We'll see you soon, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Who's it sitting and knitting? It's Dan and Kay, the bakery players. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay, the bakery players. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in your oven, or maybe a shawl you'll want to wear. So sit yourself right down and watch Dan and Kay, the